Hey guys, this is Phil Galfon for bluefirepoker.com. Um, as many of you have requested, I was in the process of writing up a blog detailing some of the more interesting hands from my heads-up match against Isildur, and I realized it would probably just be more interesting to do it in video form, so I'm just going to breeze through some of these hands. This won't be a strategy video, obviously, but more for fun. So this is a hand where I ran pretty well. 3-bet with kings and tens, no suits, so a little bit thin, but still a very strong hand. And flop, kind of bad. This is bad in general for pre-flop 3-betters range because it's very difficult for me to have a 3. Sorry, I can't really help myself from talking strategy, so that'll be a little bit, I guess. I bet small in this spot with my whole range, and he raises here, which he's going to be doing a lot. So with the 4 outs against the 3, I'm not going to be folding. This is one of the stronger hands in my range. Besides, like, aces with the 3 or, I guess, aces with a flush draw or something. I decided to call rather than jam it in right now. And hope he shuts down or hope I suck out. I do manage to suck out if he did have me beaten on the turn. He bets about half pot. I decide to call. If he's betting at 3, he'll probably bet again on the river anyways, on any river. And he may continue to bluff on a brick or on a heart. I hit my second set just for good measure, and he did end up having a 3 with a flush draw, so pretty lucky for me. And a pretty big pot. Here I just call in the big blind with some high cards. Flop trips. I decide to check raise, which is pretty standard. He calls, turn my boat, and so at this point I'm just going for 2 streets of value, and I size it so that we have about just over half pot left on the river. Unfortunately, this was a cooler. He had top boat on the flop and slow played it. Did not work out too well for me. I mean, looking through the PLO hands, there were really just a ton of huge hands, and actually I don't remember this one or why I marked it. We will see. Second boat, I bet all the way. He folds. That was an accident. I didn't mean to mark that hand. But anyways, yeah, so many of the hands weren't even that interesting. It was just like 5 bets again in pre-flop, and then we go with it on the flop with like 40% equity. This was late in the match. I think he was pretty tilted at this point. I have a pretty terrible hand. 10-8-6-4 rainbow. He 3-bets, pots the flop. He's been at this point in the match he was 3-betting. Well, he's 3-betting wide the whole match, but at this point he was potting pretty much every flop. Whereas earlier in the match he was c-betting less frequently and to a smaller amount. Anyways, I have my pair plus gut shot, or rather double gut shot. So I'm not going anywhere. I choose not to raise and get it in right now because I could be in terrible shape. I'd rather see a turn, in position, get the advantage of knowing how he's going to react to the turn card and potentially take some free cards on the turn or turn my hand into a bluff if it works out well for me. I think this is a pretty clear-cut call on the flop. Then I turn my trips, and he ends up potting into me and calling it off with, and I would shove there with a lot of draws as well. So it's not a terrible play by him, but I think this is a point in the match where he just wanted to get money in any spot, and luckily I was able to get it in. Yeah, 98% here, especially with him having 3 aces. And that was, I think, maybe the biggest pot in the match. I forget. Here's a spot where I decided to slow play, I believe. I 3-bet double-suited queens. I half-pot the flop, which I'm doing with a lot of hands. He calls, and I thought this was a spot he would float. Kind of hard to go too much into it, but I thought he'd be floating here quite a bit, and I decide to check call twice with the second nuts, and happened to work this time. Or actually not really, he was value betting with king queen. It's an interesting spot and a good value bet by him, I think, given that it looks a lot like I have a set, and I was expecting him to float a lot, so I would be calling fairly often with my sets. Also, there were some lower straight possibilities, which I guess I could have had, although pretty unlikely I'd show up with a straight there. But it's actually a spot where he very well could have folded this hand, but given that I slow played, he turned into a value betting hand. Here, this was just very unlucky. I decided to 4-bet. We're 200 big blinds deep. And this is kind of, you need an aggressive match to make this 4-bet, but I think that we had that dynamic with double suited ace queen, jack 7. Flop really well. I shove, and he ends up making the call. I think I didn't like his call, I forgot. Yeah. Since he's up against aces so often, I wasn't 4-betting all that often. I don't think he has odds there. But he ends up sucking out, which is very unfortunate. I think I was 80% there. But I definitely did my fair share of sucking out in this match. This is one where I 4-bet light, if you can call it that, with a pretty good rundown. And I flop a wrap, decide that I don't feel like bet calling it, so I check back. I turn my straight. This is at the point in the match where he was potting a lot. He pots, I jam, and he has a flush draw with a worse wrap draw. And so against, he was unlucky to run into my hand there. A lot of times I will have like kings with a club draw, and his hard outs will be live, and his straight outs will be live. But here his straight outs were all dead. And I end up holding up. Alright, so now I actually included a lot more no-limit hands in PLO, even though we didn't play too much no-limit, but it got a little more interesting. This time he 3-bets me. Honestly, a lot of the no-limit, he was playing so aggressively that I ended up just inducing with a lot of my range all around, making a lot of calls, both with some strong hands and some weak hands. I call it 3-bet, and I call his flop bet here. I consider just jamming this flop. I think it's a pretty viable option, but I end up, actually it's probably a better option. I think I prefer a jam there, because stack size is, oh, I'm sorry, I thought he was 25k deep. We're really deep. Very standard call by me. And on the turn, we have about 3.5 times pot. He checks to me, and I decide to check behind to induce. Definitely not my standard, even against an aggressive opponent. I think it's probably more profitable to bet the turn there than check, but I just decided to mix it up, and I like to be able to show up with anything in various spots, and this is one spot where I wanted to play my hand a little more deceptively. He bets the river, I raise. It looks like I'm not, repping very much, which is actually why, he should give this a lot of respect, because people don't bluff like this often, but I'd like to think that I do make bluffs like that. He folds. He actually folded pretty quickly there, so I think he might have been bluffing, in which case it worked out well.